Hey, well, it's 12:06, so I'm gonna just fire this thing up. Welcome everybody to the DIY bicycle repair virtual workshop put on by the City of Toronto's three bike hubs as part of Waste Reduction Week in Canada. Woo! I'm Sam, and I work at the Culture Link Bike Hub, which is located near Jane and Finch in Toronto. Um, and how about, let's see, who's next? Marvin, why don't you go next?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marvin Macraig. I'm a health promoter. I'm also the Tribal Cycle coordinator. We're here in our Lawrence Orange Bike Hub that's located at 3939 Lawrence Avenue.
Cool, thanks, Marvin. And Ed, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Ed. I work at Gateway Bike Hub here in Toronto in the Flemington Park neighborhood. It's the North York. I know my name on the screen says Andre, but that's my colleague there. So, yeah.
Cool. Great. So, just a little bit about the programs that we run, real quick. We all run these free community bike shops where people can come in, use the tools, and learn how to maintain and repair their own bikes. If they don't have a bike or if they need a new bike, they can build up a bike at the shop themselves. And this whole program was born out of the City of Toronto's solid waste department, which is responsible for collecting all of the abandoned bikes all over the city. They've been doing that for years. And so they started up this program to try to take all of these bikes and get them built up again and distributed into communities. And all of our hubs are strategically located in suburban locations. So part of what we do is build cycling culture in places where it is, let's say, emerging and where there isn't always the infrastructure to support the cycling community yet, but we're getting there. Ed or Marvin, do you want to say anything else about us before we jump into it?
Yeah, I can talk like a little bit about Tribal Cycle too. So, building on what Sam told you about our work here, Tribal Cycles has been around. This is our 5th year of programming here. Lawrence Orange is our newest bike hub. This is our 3rd year, I guess 2.5 years worth of programming here. So after 5 years, we worked really hard to build bike culture in Scarborough. Like a lot of volunteer opportunities, all the programs that we run. Some of the programs like our bike swap and kids bike swap today have been really successful. We took in close to 20 bikes and we took in another 20 donations. So we were just trying to, it's a good way for families who are on a budget to try and get bigger sizes for their kids' bikes, which is always the case. So right now we have a lot of little bikes here, so we're gonna try and get those out again. We're gonna have this as another event coming up. So the one of our volunteers, Doug, is having lunch. So we're just saying a little quick look through our bike hub, just like a little virtual look at. Some of these bikes here that are actually not donations. These ones are part of our program that we're gonna be giving to a local shelter in the city of Toronto. And you can see that like there's it's a always busy changing space here that we have, and there's volunteers coming in. And on a regular Saturday, I know it's a little bit different now during the pandemic, but on a regular Saturday, the place would be bustling with people and volunteers and youth and intergenerational, old, young. It's a place more than a bike hub. It's actually a place for the community to come together. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Marvin. So like Sam said, Gateway, we're one of the 3 city-run bike hubs for solid waste management. Today we have behind me our most popular program, Do It Yourself. all of us have a do-it-yourself program where we teach individuals from the community to come in and learn how to fix their bikes. And one of the biggest emphases, especially for Waste Reduction Week, is that all of us bike hubs, we try to encourage people to reuse their the items on their bikes. So we teach them how to maintain and also restore things on their bikes if they don't need replacing. We try to minimize replacement as much as possible. So today's session will be uh, little tips we can give you to help you kind of maintain your bike without replacing. Thanks. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay. Thanks, Marvin. Thanks, Ed. So we're going to actually start off with Marvin. He's going to give a brief presentation. But before I throw it over to him, just so that everyone's on the same page, we are making a recording of this session, and we'll make the link to the video available to everybody who registered for the event. Some folks have already started posting questions in the chat. That's fantastic. That's the perfect way to do it. I'll be keeping track of the questions, and then we'll do save some time at the end for some free Q&A if you have any specific repair things, topics that you want to discuss. So without any more of having to listen to me talk, I'll throw it over to Marvin.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to just do a basic safety check on a bike. On the internet, if you Google safety check, there's many different ways to do it. Like, you know, cooking an egg. Everyone's going to have their own way of enjoying how they do a safety check. Well, I'm going to show you what we do here. We do an ABC check, and there's this one that I call the M, stands for Marvin check. So at the very least, when you have your bike, so we do an ABC check, and at the very least, you should, A stands for air. So we got to make sure that at the very least, your tires are pumped up. And usually people you'll see a lot of people will try to push it with their thumb, which is probably not the best thing to do because your thumb is actually not that strong when you're pushing it like that. So it has to be really like firm, like almost like your forehead. Like your forehead has to be like really firm. So if it's firm and you know that the both sides are not squishing down when you push down on it with your thumb, that's usually really helpful to know. Then the next thing you do is usually on all tires, there's a recommended tire pressure. So there's on the side of your tire, there's like a whole bunch of numbers. Some of them may or may not make sense to you, but you're gonna look for the one that says inflate max or inflate minimum, and they'll say the PSI, and that's what it is, the pounds per square inch, and what that recommended tire pressure is. It usually starts off a minimum to a maximum. And then what we do here is, depending on the season or whatever, we will inflate it usually to the maximum, so that the event chances of you getting a flat. So the first thing is air, make sure it's thick. So inflate it. Then it's B, so B stands for brake. So you want to make sure that your leverage will never ever touch the handlebar. So you want it to be feeling squishy, right? So it's hard to show when you're showing, but we're indoors. But at the very least, you want to be able to drag your right wheel, your rear wheel, so it can actually lock. And at the very least, it might be a little bit changing when you're sitting on it, but that's what you're looking for. You want your brake to be able to lock your bike. The front brake too, you want to be able to close it, and if you can lift up that rear wheel, obviously it's not going to lift up when you're sitting on it because of your weight, but if you can lift it up by just pushing it, like this, then you know that your front brakes are working. And brakes are one of the things that are that we teach here at Carbo Cycles. It's almost non-negotiable, meaning that they have to be working, because there's a difference between stopping and continuing on with your day, or not stopping and falling off your bike and getting hurt. And we don't want that. The last part is the C, is chain and crank, right? So here we have the chain, and in the chain, most people think that it has to be greasy and wet. It actually doesn't have to be all greasy. But the only parts that have to be lubed on your chain are the inner parts. So the out part should be relatively dry, and if it's dry, that's okay. And then we drop the lube on the pins and the rollers. That's what we're called. So the chain has to be not sagging, and it should be in good shape. And then you also hold on to the crank and see if there's any movement at all there, if it's wobbling. So that's the ABC check at the very least, and you should do it before you ride. Every time you ride, I do it, and I train all our volunteers to do it every time before the ride, because if you can spot like these small little things, like you have a low pressure, you want to pump it up, like it will make your ride that much more enjoyable, and you can avoid things that happen like when you're farther away from home. So air, brake, chain, and crank, and then the other check that we do for all bikes that come through is like an M check. So this is a little bit more thorough, and I'll just show it to those people that are more interested in it. And we say it's an M because we start here and we look, and we go look down and come back up. So the M, we start off at the very axle, and we look at it, make sure that this thing is actually attached, like the lever is attached or the nuts are not loose, because your wheel will fall out if it is loose. So we don't want that to happen. So make sure that we look at this, and then we work our way up the frame. We look at the brakes, make sure there's no debris or anything hanging off of it. Then we work our way to the top. Okay? Make sure that everything is all tight and it's aligned, and it's not crooked or any way like the bike has been dropped. And we look at all the handlebars, all the accessories. Then we work our way down. We just talked about the crank, make sure that there's no play, and this is your chance to look if there's any damage on the crank, and if any parts are missing. Look at the derailleur. We look up here, make sure that all this stuff is intact and no parts are missing, and make sure the seat does not move. That becomes really annoying when you're riding and your seat is moving and you're not making the power that you want to propel yourself forward. When we're doing this M check, we'll also take out the seat post and we'll grease it to make sure that it can be adjusted in the future. We work our way down, then we look at your brake, and we finally look at the crank and the rear derailleur and the chain to make sure it's all clean and it's ready for service. And then one thing that I always teach our volunteers too, after we do all that, because we're so focused on like a bike, like we're so focused on certain parts, I'll tell them to actually step back and actually look at the bike, because when you're focused on little parts, you might not see if like parts are bent or straight. Sometimes we'll tell people to look at like stand behind the bike if you can see if wheels are not true, or if they're crooked, or if parts are missing. So we always tell our volunteers to step back and actually look at the whole thing. And when you're looking at bikes all day long, you start to notice small little differences. Okay. So that's the very beginning of a ABC or an M check, safety check, and I'll pass it back to Sam. Thanks a lot, Sam.
Thank you, Marvin. Great job. So great overview of how to check your bike out, make sure that it's safe to ride, and to know when it has an issue. And sometimes how to address it. That awareness and that knowledge is probably the most important component of keeping your bike running well and keeping it maintained and repaired, is just to pay attention to how everything is working. So thanks very much for that, Marvin. I'm up next, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how some things you can do to keep your bike in good working order, especially as we're heading into fall and winter. Well, we're in fall, but it's about to get colder and get into winter. So first, I'm going to take you over to the table here and show you some of the things that we recommend everybody have if they're going to be using their bike on a regular basis. So the first thing that you want to have is a bottle of chain lubricant. It doesn't really matter what kind it is, just as long as it's specific for a bicycle. And you want to cut up some old t-shirts or sweatshirts into rags. That's really important because you're going to need to use the oil definitely on your chain on a regular basis. as well as other parts. The second thing, or I guess the third thing that we think everybody should have is one of these. So this is not just a pump, but it's a pump with a gauge on it. So Marvin was talking about how the different tires will be able to hold different air pressures. And so if you have a pump without a gauge on it, you're never going to be sure if you've gone over the maximum or if you're way below the minimum. You want to have that gauge for your own peace of mind and your own safety, just to know how much air is in the tires. The amount of air in the tires is also really important for just how pleasurable of a bike ride you're going to have. And some other things that are really great to have for keeping your bike in working order. We're going to talk about storage a little bit. So here I've got the classic blue plastic tarp from the dollar store and a really old bungee cord. So talking about keeping your bike covered, and then a couple other things. This is a really handy thing to have. This is a bicycle multi-tool. So it costs, maybe $30 or $40, but it's got lots and lots of tools that are specific to bicycles on it. I think this one's got about 20 different tools on it. So instead of buying all those different things, you can buy one of these. You can take it with you, and you can do a lot of work on your bike. One of the things that this doesn't have is a wrench. So I like to pair it with just a small adjustable wrench. So those are the sort of the basic things that we think everybody should have with them. And then of course, when you need to use some more serious tools, come on into the bike hub and we'll help you out because we've got everything here. So we'll start off by talking about this bicycle here. So this came in the other day, and it's pretty typical of what we see with what we do here. It's got some rust on it, and you can tell that this bike gets stored outside, which is fine, but it's also, you can tell that it's not covered when it's being stored outside. So to keep your bike in really good working order, what you want to do is, if you don't have an indoor place to store it, you want to go to the dollar store or the hardware store and grab a tarp and just cover the bike, and then use the bungee cord down below to keep it wrapped up. That's probably the number one thing that you can do to keep your bike from getting rusty. But it's not just the rust that you want to be worried about. There's a lot of plastic parts on bicycles. So for example, a lot of saddles are covered in black plastic here. And if you leave this outside and it's exposed to the sun is going to cook the plastic, and it's going to make it really brittle, and it can break. So if you've seen saddles that have lots of holes or what have you in them, they might have been stored outside in the sun, and over time they're going to degrade really quickly. So keep your stuff lasting a long time and working well. We want to keep it covered, especially if it's going to be stored for a long time. The second thing with storage and making sure that things don't get rusty or seized up is to ride your bike. Ideally, the bike is happiest when it's being ridden every day. So that way, even if you get some water that gets into the chain or into some other parts, when you take it out and you ride it and you're moving all of those parts around, you're actually helping to get that water out, and especially get it out of those interior places in the bike so that it doesn't have a chance to create that rust. if you do get some rust on your chain, then you're going to want to get out your chain oil and your rag, and you're going to want to lube the chain a little bit. So I'll show you, there are lots of different ways to do this, and ideally, you know, it's great to go into the bike hub or a bike shop, get some degreaser, give it a full clean like that, but you don't always have time to do that when you're at home. So it's really good to be able to just do a quick, some quick maintenance on your chain, maybe once a week or more if you ride more. So I'll try to get it set up here so you can see the view. So there's the chain, and you can see this chain, it's got some rust on it, but it is moving, so it's not too bad. So to do this, what you want to do, your goal with the chain is that you want it to be dry on the outside and wet on the inside. And you want to make sure that that all that dirt and everything that's on the outside of your chain, that it collects over time. You want to make sure that that dirt doesn't get to the inside of the chain where all the moving parts are. So the first thing that you want to do is take your rag and just stick it down here right in front of the derailleur on this part of the chain, and then just pedal backwards, and that'll move the chain through the rag. And as it does this, the rag should pick up a whole bunch of nasty stuff. Okay, so it can get a lot of the rust off, it can get a lot of the dirt off, and you just keep doing that. Try to get as much of that dirt off. You can leave the chain still and use your arm to go back and forth, etc. So once you've given the chain a good dry wipe like this, and you got as much of that dirt off as possible, then you can take the lube and you can put a little bit of lube on each link of the chain. So you can hold it right back here above the chain, just like this. Get the chain moving, just pedaling backwards, and try to get a slow stream. You want to get about 1 drop on each link of the chain. Okay, and once you've got that, then you want to just keep pedaling backwards. And what this does is it gets the oil from the outside down to the inside of the chain where you want it to be. And as it's doing that, as it's moving, the new oil that you just put on, it's in essence, it's rinsing the chain out, just moving some of the dirt that's in there all the way out. So again, it's not as good as a full wash, but it's pretty good, just like a rinse. So now you just take your rag, find a clean spot on the rag, and same thing, give it a nice wipe. So what we want to do here is we want to keep the outside of the chain nice and dry. If the outside of the chain is oily and wet, then all it's going to be doing is grabbing dust out of the air and sticking it to the chain. If the chain's dry, then it won't be doing that. It's also helpful for not giving you the classic cyclist tattoo on the side of your calf, if your calf happens to rub up against the chain. Okay, and so that's it. That's the quick sort of everyday chain maintenance that you can do. So again, it's basically just wipe, oil, wipe, and you can do that a couple of times and rinse out that chain, keep it nice and lubricated. Okay. Another thing that that we see here all the time with the bikes that come in is if you look down here, so there's these brake cables running off of the brake levers here, 1, 2, and At the edge of the brake levers, you have these special bolts called barrel bolts. And these barrel bolts have a groove in them, or a slot. And if you leave the slot facing upwards, then water can get in that slot and it can get inside your brake line and it can cause rust. And if that happens, then your brakes aren't going to work very well at all. So it's really important to, if you have this kind of brake system set up, is to take your barrel adjuster bolts and to make sure that they're facing down all the time. You don't have to twist them a lot. Usually just, maximum it should be a half turn. But if you keep those bolts facing down, then you won't get water in your brake lines and your brakes will work a lot longer and you won't need to replace your cables and your housing as much, which again, the whole point of what we're doing here is we're trying to reduce and reuse and repair. So we want things to keep working as long as possible. So that's, those are some tips just for keeping your bike running well. There's a lot more stuff that we could talk about, but I think that's enough from me for now. So I'll throw it over to Ed from Gateway, who's gonna talk, I believe, about how to bring your punctured tube back to life.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, I'm going to be a little more specific than Marvin and Sam. We're going to talk about flat repair, and I'm going to go over how to restore a flat tire. It's probably the most common repair request that we get from at our hub and maybe the other hubs as well. Everyone, it's probably one of the easier things that you could do yourself, even at home, and you don't need many tools at all. I'm not going to go over the whole process. I'm just going to go over in the chat. I'm sending out a link to our YouTube channel, which has a flat fix video. So if you need details on how to remove the tube from the tire. So here I have a tube that was removed from the middle of the tire, and I'll just send that out now. And you can get a puncture at any time, depending on your air pressure or something sharp pokes your tire. And what we're going to learn today is how to patch it. So you can get these different patch kits from any store. There's a patch kit here from Canadian Tire. It's a glueless patch kit. They are literally just rubber pieces with adhesive back, so you could stick them on the hole. There's here I have a patch kit you can get from also from Canadian Tire or Walmart or any bike store. Inside the patch kit, they'll have a number of patches and also glue. Okay. So how would you patch a kit if you patch a hole? If you're first, you have to find the hole, and it's included in the video on how to find a hole where you pump up the tube. You probably do need a pretty decent pump to pump it full of air, and then you listen carefully for the hole. And once you find that hole, you put your finger on it. And then in your patch kit, you would have something like a piece of sandpaper or emery paper or a piece of, here there's a piece of metal with some perforations on it that you can scratch the surface of the tube. And what does this do? Well, when you rough up the tube, the rubber, you actually create a surface that makes it better for adhering to glue. Okay, so you're scratching it up around the hole, but before you do that, you should always monitor how big your hole is. So if this particular tube has a massive hole, look at this hole. This is not patchable, okay? You're probably gonna have to replace this tube. There's no patch big enough. But each patch kit has different size of patches. And if you put your thumb on the hole and you find the appropriate size patch, and there's a bigger patch, you can actually put the patch on the tube. And then once you roughed up the surface, you take the glue. There's usually a tube of glue, and you open it. And then, this is very hard to show on camera here. You would actually squeeze the glue out and you spread it around in a fairly even dispensing. And you want the glue to cover equal amounts on a pretty wide surface. So in my case, I'm using the patch that's this big. I want the glue surface to be slightly bigger than the patch. Okay, here's the trick that we give most people to have a very good patch experience. A lot of times the glue is very wet and it's rubber cement. And the key is to actually let the glue dry a little bit and not put the patch on right away. If you put on a patch right away when it's too wet, it'll actually not stick. And I'm not sure why that is, but rubber cement seems to be adhere better to these patches when it's slightly dry. So you either wait a couple of minutes for the sheen to kind of go away. You don't want it too glossy, or you can blow on it just to dry it up a little bit. I'm just gonna. So I don't know if anyone has seen, you could do this on the roadside. I carry a patch kit with me when I'm biking, and sometimes I get a flat. And on the side of the road, sometimes it's hard to keep the surface clean, so you make sure no dirt or anything is on it before you apply the glue. And then it's kind of looked funny on roadside when you're blowing on a tube and people are driving by and they're saying, "Well, what's he doing?" And well, I'm trying to make the glue dry. So anyways, so as you can see, the glue has dried a little bit. So what I'm doing now is I'm peeling off the back foil. And most patches will have a foil back. Try not to touch the back of the patch because this is what's going to stick. And the oils from your hands will actually impede the stickiness. There's usually a plastic film over top of the patch. So I'm going to show this here. So I'm sticking it on the hole and I'm pressing down the edges with my fingers. So in theory, once the patch is on, it should stay on. And some people, not me, some people like to peel this plastic film and it should come right off. I tend to leave it on because it doesn't harm the tube. And sometimes if you pull on it, it'll actually pull the patch right off. And I don't want that. I want the extra security of just keeping the patch on. So once again, that's how you patch a tube. And then you install the tube back in the tire, you pump it up and it will not leak. Now, again, you can go to our YouTube video for our detailed process of fixing a flat, but that's pretty much it. That's how you patch a tube and restore your tube, and you don't have to buy a new one. Over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Ed. That was great. One little just addition about the plastic film. I found when I used to take that film off and then I put the tube inside my tire, then the cement would stick to the tire as well, which you don't really want. So so that plastic, it makes a nice barrier so that the cement stays where it's supposed to. So yeah, great stuff. Oh, and yeah, one other thing about the tubes, if you do have a blowout like the explosion that that Ed showed, don't throw it away. Bike tubes are the second most useful material known to man, behind duct tape, in my opinion. You can do all kinds of amazing stuff with them, from homemade bungee cords to, I use this one to tie the leg of my pants, so that my pants don't get stuck in my gears. So yeah, you know, sky's the limit for things you can use a tube for. Great. So I've been keeping a list of questions. If there's more questions, please just throw them in the chat. The 3 that I have right now, we had 2 questions about chains, which I'll address those. And then there was a question about stuck cables and housing, which maybe Marvin, if you want to talk about that once I'm done with the chains. So the chain questions that we got were, when I was talking about the inside of the chain and the outside of the chain, and what exactly does that mean? So basically the outside of the chain is everything that you can see. So I'll try to zoom in here on the old chain. So yeah, anything that you can see on the chain, that's the outside. The inside of the chain is where they're called the rollers. So it's these little circular pieces in the middle. So they move around a what's kind of like an axle, and so that part in the middle there, where it's sort of in the middle of that circle and between the circle and the pin, that's the inside of the chain. That's the part of the chain where when the chain is moving and it's turning, all of that stuff, that's the part that's actually moving. And as you ride, if you don't keep that part nice and oiled, the metal on metal will start to wear itself away. And the chain, once it loses that material, the chain actually, they call it chain stretch, where it seems like the chain is getting longer, but really it's just the material wearing away. And if your chain gets longer, then that's going to press on your gears in a way that makes them very unhappy, and it can mess up your gears in the front and in the back. And then before you know it, you're having to replace your entire drivetrain, which is not good. So that's why it's important to keep your chain nice and lubricated. And again, especially on the inside, you want to flush that dirt and that grit out, you know, from that point between the circle and the pin. Okay, like that, it should be able to move nice and easy with that. The other chain question that we got was, how often should you do that rinse that I showed on your bike? So just like, you know, every question with bikes, the answer is it depends. But I would say the more you ride your bike, probably the less you have to do this. Because again, if you're riding it every day, it's not really getting a chance to rust or cause any of those issues. If you only ride your bike every once in a while and you know, the parts are sort of sitting there not moving for a long period of time, then probably every time you ride your bike, it would be a good idea just to do, you know, take 30 seconds, 60 seconds and do that oil wipe procedure just to get everything moving again. And again, especially if you store your bike outside and there's that, you know, threat of rust getting in there. But in general, you know, I bike every day and quite a bit, I would say, per day. And I would say my goal is to do this once a week. I probably end up doing it once every 2 weeks. And that, you know, that works fine for me. But sort of getting back to where we started with Marvin, just keep having that awareness of your bike and just keeping an eye on your chain and how's it running? Is it making any noise? How's it looking? that awareness is the most important thing. And if you think it needs a rinse, give it a rinse. You know, it's it just takes about a minute. So yeah, that's probably a long answer. I could have just said once a week, but there you go. You got the full.
Yeah, we got a question about cables.
Yeah, over to you, Marvin, about stuck cables.
What's the question exactly? You know, is it fresh? Yeah. Oh, okay. So with cables, most people they won't recognize or one thing that we're learning about bikes is that there's actually two types of cables on your bike. There's brake cable and shifter cable, and there's brake housing and shifter housing. So the thing that most people don't realize is they look the same, right? So this is brake housing. You can come closer, Leah. This is brake housing and this is shifter housing. Outside, they actually look the same, but when you cut them open, they actually look like this. So brake housing is like a helical coil, like this. And there's a picture. And then shifter housing has all these little strands that are connected like that. You can see it a little bit like that. And they do different things. So you can't swap them out. Like you can't use one for the other. Like you're not going to get the same performance. In some cases, it's actually very dangerous if you use shifter housing for brakes, because in the brake cable, when you crush that brake and you need to stop immediately, the housing is what actually makes you stop. It stays there, and the helical coil is actually made of steel, and it makes you stop. It doesn't compress. As for the shifter housing, you will get that same thing, but it won't last over a long time. Like you'll eventually be in an unsafe situation, and then all these little strands will break out of the housing. So the question was, so that's the housing, and then the cables are actually also very different. So we have this little thing that we show our volunteers. I know it's really small. I'm sorry. There's a brake cable for your road bike and a brake cable for your mountain bike, and the shift cable. So I know you can't really see here, but actually you can actually see a little bit that the shifter cable is actually the diameter is much smaller, right? And I'm gonna I know it's not gonna come on camera, but it's actually much smaller. So the shifter housing it's not being used to stop the bike as opposed to brake. The brake cable is actually being used to stop the bike. That's why there is a difference. So some questions about maintenance. Shifter and brake housing is actually one of the things that you notice on your performance right away of your bike. And we recommend that we change them once a year in the spring. It's actually a very cheap way to keep your bike maintained for a few dollars. If you change your cables on a yearly basis, that's a way that you can make sure that everything is running smoothly and freely. And when we change housing, we actually change both things. We don't just change one. We try to do both if possible. So we change the housing and also the cable. Any other questions, Sam, about brakes that came up? About cables?
Yeah, if I could just add a little something about the cables, that was great, Marvin. One thing that I found really useful, so if you don't have access to new cables, if you can't make it into a bike hub or what have you, you can do some stuff with the cables that you've got. So a lot of bikes will have some cable exposed, and so you can take your chain oil and you can just put a little bit of lube on that part that's exposed. That's really easy to do. And then with a lot of these bikes, you can actually just, here, let me see if you can see this. You can just remove, sort of pop this part out like that. And then once you do that, you can expose basically the entire cable. So you can, once it's out, then you can move the housing along and you can expose these different sections. And you can actually really quickly and easily oil all the different sections of cable. Right, so you can see it moving like that. And just oil it up, the whole thing, and try to get it, inside the housing, move it around a bit because you want this part to be able to move really easily. That's a good way to keep your cables running smoothly, if you can't replace them.
Sam, while you're at it, there's a question about the barrel adjuster. Clarification, can you show on your bike right now, on that brake, what the barrel adjuster does?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So the barrel adjuster, it's designed to make it easy to tighten your brakes. So as you use your brakes, the brake pads wear away, and over time, you need to squeeze the brake lever more and more. And if you squeeze it, if you let it go for too long, you eventually get to the point where this bike is, where the lever is almost touching the handlebar. And if I really pull, it is touching the handlebar. So with that, and that's a very dangerous situation if you get into that situation, because in an emergency, you're going to slam on those brakes, but all that force that you're applying, instead of going through the cable to the brake, it's just going to go straight into the handlebar, and it's not actually going to stop the bike. So what you want to do is add a little bit of tension to that line. So let me see if I can get the camera right. Okay, so here's the brake lever, and here's the barrel adjuster. So to add some tension to this, what you want to do is take this barrel bolt, and if you turn it counterclockwise, so lefty-loosey, then it's going to move out from the brake lever a little bit. And so it's a little sticky. Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. So you turn it out, a few turns. The bolt, it's not super long, so you can't turn it forever, but you can usually get, 3 or 4 good turns. And so now you can see it's sticking out from the brake lever. And then this part, there's a little nut here. That's to lock it in place. So you turn that one clockwise, righty-tighty, and you just lock it in on the brake lever. And now, when I squeeze it, I've got quite a bit more space between the handlebar and the brake lever. This is still probably not enough. So in that case, what I would want to do is not just use the barrel adjuster here, but this is going to need a full sort of brake tightening, in which case you want to take the barrel adjuster and turn and put it all the way in, so that later on you have space to move it out. And then you want to come down to the brake itself, and you want to find where the cable sits on the brake, and you want to loosen that nut and actually pull the cable tighter within the brake itself, and then tighten it down. And really what you want to do, the sort of general rule that we use, is to have about 2 fingers between the brake lever and the handlebar. That's pretty safe, because then if you really slam on it, you still shouldn't be touching the handlebar with the brake lever. So yeah, so that's barrel adjusters. You can find them on brakes. You also find them on shifters. So this is the shifter line right here, and this fat black plastic thing inside of this, there's a barrel bolt. So if you want to just tighten your, if your shifting's just a little bit off and you want to just tighten it a little bit, you can just turn this to the left to make it a little bit tighter, or you can turn it to the right to take tension out of that line. So it's a little bit sort of reversed, you think about, like, if you're making it tighter, but you're going to the left, usually tight is associated with going to the right. So it's a little bit reversed, but it works the same way. Some bikes will have barrel adjusters down here on the rear derailleur. So right here, this black plastic thing inside of that, there's another barrel adjuster. And these are all just for fine tuning these different parts of your bike, whether it's the brakes or the shifters. So Thanks for asking that question. I love talking about neuro adjusters. Okay. So it looks like we've got one more question from Tamer. Sam, can you show how you can deal with stuck gear shifter itself as well? How to take it out maybe and replace it. Gear shifter's completely stuck. Okay. So my first, I guess there's lots of different kinds of shifters. I'm gonna assume that we're talking about the kind that are on this bike, because these are really common. They're like grip shifters where you just twist like this. If that's not what you want to hear about, just, okay, yes, awesome. So with these are sort of notoriously difficult to work on, and they're also very cheap. So generally the thing to do is if the shifter itself is not working, then you want to replace it. But a lot of times, you know, people come in and they think, oh, my shifter is broken, something's wrong, I have to push really hard to shift, that kind of thing. And it's not actually the shifter that's the issue. It's maybe that they have a little bit of rust in the line, you know, like we were talking about before, or any other number of issues like within that system. But the way that you experience it is that the shifting feels really bad. And so you think, oh, the shifter must be broken. So really these things, unless you are really, you know, pushing them super hard and you hear, you know, hearing some plastic pieces snap, then you definitely have a broken shifter and you want to come into a bike hub and get that replaced. I know for us, we have a gigantic bin full of these things that we've taken off old bikes. I would imagine that Marvin and Ed are in the same situation. So don't be shy, come and grab a shifter from us. And yeah, and if it's not the shifter, we can help you diagnose exactly what the issue is as well. Great, thanks for your question. So it is 12:58. If there's any more last minute questions, we can try to hit them, but maybe we'll just go around the horn one more time and just sort of say, you know, where we're located and how people can get in touch with us. So maybe Ed, do you want to start it off? Just if people want more info on Gateway, how do they get that?
Yeah, yeah, Gateway, we've only been around for a year and a half, probably at the end of this. We started in March of 2019. And yeah, we just had this morning a kids bike giveaway. We gave away 30 bikes. We got some donations. That was our bike drive. And we're happy to take any kind of donations. If you know, from anywhere in any condition, we are happy to take it in, and we would try to teach our volunteers to refurbish it, or we would try to work on it and do our earn a bikes. So we do have earn a bike programs where residents of the community can register, and we would teach how to refurbish a bike. And then we also do a ride component. We would actually get to ride the bikes, and we actually and then afterwards you get to keep the bike. So that's a great, one of our most popular programs. Lots of people need a bike, especially in this pandemic. We also do holistic programs like Learn to Rides, teaching people if you've never ridden a bike before, or if you're just learning cycling skills, we do that as well. And we also do cycling safety. And we are growing, so we want to evolve into offering more diverse programs like winter riding and stuff like that. So yeah, come and visit us if you are in Toronto. And we're at 10 Gateway Boulevard. It's in Flemington Park. Close to the intersection is Don Mills and Overley. Okay, thanks.
All right, Marvin, go.
So I know we're running out of time here, so I'll be very quick and brief. So Scarborough Cycles, we operate 3 community bike hubs. We are in our Lawrence, Orton, bike hub right now. We're located at 3939 Lawrence Avenue East, where that's where we are today. Like Ed mentioned, we offer a very similar program. We have an earn the bike program. We have a drop-in program. Our DIY program is currently not available right now, but we're working very hard to make that available very soon. So I just want to make sure that you, if you want to learn more, we can just, our Twitter feed is at Scarb Cycles, and our website is scarborocycles.ca. And then if you hit the mail button, it'll go straight to us. So just on our website, just hit mail, and we'll reach out. And like Ed mentioned, that like donations, we take donations, we refurbish it. Part of the things that we do for Waste Reduction Week, this kind of stuff. Our next kids bike giveaway will probably be in the spring or maybe in the actual winter time, because we actually encourage riding as an everyday activity. So yeah, so make sure you check out our website, and we'll see you soon. I'm really looking forward to connecting to more and more people as we enter our 6th year of programming at Suburban.
Great, thanks, Marvin. And yeah, once again, I'm Sam from the Culture Link Bike Hub at 15 Tobermory Drive in North York, just off of Finch Avenue West, halfway between Keele and Jane. And we currently are open Wednesdays 3:30 to 6:30, Saturdays 10 to 3. Come on by, say hello. Get involved. If you're around, we're doing a group ride today at 3:30. So if you feel like going for a ride on this beautiful fall day, come on out and join us. It's going to be great. And yeah, we're all funded by the City of Toronto Solid Waste Services Department through the Community Reduce and Reuse program, which does all sorts of amazing stuff, and we're just a part of that, and building the bike culture in the inner suburbs of Toronto. So so check it out. Love to see you. Thanks for attending and for all the great questions. This has been a real pleasure, and once again, I will send out the link to the video within the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that, and share it with everyone you know and everyone you don't know. Thanks so much, everybody, and happy Waste Reduction Week. Have a good one.
Thanks. Be safe. Happy Waste Reduction Week.
All right, bye, everyone.
Talk to you guys all soon.
All right. You want to go back to that area?